Happy New Year to you all, my duelists, and I hope you're doing well. I hope this past holiday season was well for you all, and I hope you all had a great Christmas. I do apologize for the lack of action here. During this past holiday period, I was extra busy with work as well as a lot of other things, but with the skies looking a little clearer now, I thought it'd be a good time to jump back into the arena. While I'm here, I also wanted to take the time to say thank you for an amazing past year. With my transition to the new platform of YouTube and for liking and engaging with my content, it really does mean a lot, and seeing the growth just from this past year alone has been incredible. I couldn't be here without any of you guys, and I'm very grateful. Truly, thank you. And with that being said, let's enter the new year with some new energy. What's goody with you all today? My name is RayGVT, and today I'd like to start by talking about something that I've been very interested in. But first, I feel like this video and topic requires a little context. Let's begin. Around mid last year, I made a video on this channel talking about what makes a good starter and structure deck, which to this day is my best performing video that I've put on this channel. In this video, I sought out to answer the question of, well, what makes a good starter or structure deck? To answer that question, I ended up narrowing it down to 3 absolutely essential things that I thought every good starter and structure deck needs, and that's, number 1, they have to be cheap enough for anyone to purchase at entry-level prices. Number 2, introduce new strategies or boost existing strategies in a powerful way. And 3, offer up some good or much needed card reprints. I also had a secret 4th element, and that was that it had to be relevant to the current meta at the time, which I still think is a good point and request. Just days after I had posted that very video, Konami came out and announced a brand new 2-player starter deck that was going to hit us in early 2024. There were no major details just yet outside of the product box and planned release date, but this made me and many very happy. Everyone started putting in their thoughts and speculations for what the deck could include. There was a picture of Zeus on the front of the box. Were they planning on making such a strong staple more accessible? What other major staples could we get in here? Vanadium Primeheart was also on the cover, and Starfrost too? Were we actually going to get modern, meta-relevant archetypes in a starter deck? Anything was possible, and it was looking like Konami was actually listening to us. It looked like it was about to provide all the 3 major points that we listed on making a killer structure and starter deck. The reception of the initial announcement was also very positive, so this was looking good. Fast forward to January 2024 of the new year, and Konami posted a short clip detailing some upcoming products which we were expecting, such as Maze of Millennia, another reprint set, and part 2 of Maze of Memories, which was a decent sized set which saw release in March of 2023, and the new 2-player starter deck that was about to drop in just a couple of weeks. In this short clip, however, Konami thought it a good idea to give us just a small sneak peek of what we can expect from this deck, and well, it wasn't good. In this short 5 seconds, we were shown some of the cards that were confirmed from the set. Dark Magician, Swords of Revealing Light, Magic Cylinder, Eldritch the Golden Lord, and Sparkman? What? What are they including in here? Where is this going? So many questions, and the community was not having it. Many took to their keyboards to let Konami know that this was just tone deaf. There's no way that this is what we're expecting from this deck. Some of these replies were actually hilarious. I shared a lot of these thoughts too, but I decided to hold off on letting my thoughts known because I kept thinking, it's fine, it's just a small preview. It's literally just showing us 7 cards out of the many, and you never know, they could actually still really surprise us with this. Well, fast forward about another week, and the full card list was revealed for the set, and it confirmed a lot of people's disappointment. The deck, or decks, because this is a 2-player starter deck, was packed with a heap of generic cards, most that didn't see a lot, if any, play at all in the modern day. With the exception of a few meta-relevant and staple cards, it looked like this just wasn't it. Dark Magician, Ojamas, and Sparkman? Swords of Revealing Light, and Magic Cylinder? A whole lot of debate began. Well, fast forward to the day of release, and here we are. The 2-player starter deck is finally here. Is this a product that's worth your money? Because this thing really ain't cheap. Well, let's jump in and begin to analyze this. I'm gonna give you guys my honest thoughts, and to do that, I'm gonna take it back a bit and judge it by those same 3 main points that we introduced in our previous starter deck video. Now, before we begin properly, it's important that I explain the main difference between a starter deck and a structure deck, which is something that I kind of failed to do fully in my previous video. Starter decks are designed to be decks that can get you started with all the basics of what you need to get dueling straight away. They usually don't include anything too crazy, but you find everything that you need to get started as they come with things that are relevant to the period that we're in. For example, way back in 2017, when we entered the new age of Yu-Gi-Oh! And were introduced to Link monsters, we got the starter deck Link Strike deck. This was a very basic starter deck which came packed with some staples and some of the new Cybers cards. They weren't anything crazy at the time, but you got the basic gist. Moving forward, and we would receive another starter deck in the form of starter deck Codebreaker, which expanded on the Cybers theming as we got even more Cybers cards included in the main and extra deck, rather than just the extra generic cards that we can expect in every deck. On the other side, we have structure decks. These are themed archetype decks that come out more frequently than starter decks and are designed to get you off the ground and playing a little more seriously for a lower cost than building a whole deck from scratch. Though they include some very generic and beginner friendly cards and staples themselves, you also find some really good and powerful meta staple cards that you can use in a lot of decks. They also come with a full guide on how to play said archetype and include some combo guides as well as additional tips for how to improve that deck using cards from the current boosters out at the time. I know this is all common knowledge to the experienced players, but it's important to explain this because there's more difference between the two than people might think. So, does the 2-player starter set do it for the new players? Well, let's begin with point number 1. This product is not the cheapest thing to jump into. It's about $60 AUD, which is pretty pricey, but of course, that's because this is 2 decks in one. A standard starter or structure deck will run you about $20 AUD, and getting 2 of these would be $40 AUD. But because this is Yu-Gi-Oh! And everyone's always looking to optimize the experience, a playset of 3 decks would cost you $60 AUD. And this gets you a whole playset of all the key cards that you need to play at the peak of the product. So for the same price as a playset of 3 decks is what they're charging for 2 beginner decks. This is important to know in the decision making because we'll soon get into just how worth this is and what exactly you're getting for that value. I'd say for the price of this, it is a bit on the expensive side, even if it is a 2-in-1 deck set for 2 players. Again, that's kinda up to you to decide if this is something that's worth it for you. If you are getting it to play with a second player, that's up to you to decide if that friendship is worth it. Now, let's move on to point number 2 because this is where we get more into the details of the set and what comes in it. Does this deck set introduce any new strategies or boost existing ones? To put it simply, no, it doesn't. Because of the nature of starter decks, they don't bring anything too crazy to the table as we explained before, and usually just serve to bring and introduce you to the current mechanics present at the time. Example, starter deck Yuya served as a basic intro to pendulums and how they work, while starter deck Link Strike served to introduce us to the new Link mechanic that was present at the time. Because we're not in any major new era of Yu-Gi-Oh! Right now, where we have a new summon type or mechanic that's been added to the game, this deck is pretty much Yu-Gi-Oh! As it is today. There's no brand new cards that are being introduced in this set or anything, and it's not adding anything significant to what we have already. It's packed with a lot of basic and generic cards from different periods in time, and it's all designed to just work when used together. Nothing too crazy here, so let's move on to the 3rd point. Does this deck offer up some good or much needed card reprints? To that, I would say yes, and also no. While the deck does come packed with heaps of generic cards, you do get a few nice staples included in here. The notable ones being Divine Arsenal, AA Zeus, and Daigusto Emerald. Including a card like Zeus in a starter deck is such a dope move, and it definitely incentivizes players to buy it more because of just how much of a good card Zeus is in the meta. And cards like Coral Dragon and Daigusto haven't had reprints since 2016, so this is really nice. Eldritch the Golden Lord is also a nice inclusion in here too, though a little bit out of place, but we'll talk more on that in a minute. So you definitely do get a few nice cards in here that are meta relevant, but it's just so outweighed by the amount of generic cards and filler that's in here. Don't get me wrong, you can absolutely make it work with the cards that are in here if you're playing at the absolute beginner level. but a good amount of these cards are not making the cut to your future decks. You really have to weigh it and ask yourself if spending the $60 or whatever amount it is in your currency is worth it for a few useful staple cards among the sea of generic junk that you're also getting in here. I think I've made it clear and talked enough about the amount of generic stuff that's included in this deck, so I think it's time to explain the gimmick of this deck in particular, because it has a bit of a gimmick to it. See, the 2-player starter set is designed to be played in a specific way, as it's supposed to be playing out a completely scripted duel for both players. You're supposed to follow a certain flow, and this is evident in the packaging, as the deck will even tell you to not shuffle your cards before you begin playing. Included inside the 2-player starter set is a comic book style guide manual thing that takes you through basically an entire duel that will teach you stuff like normal summoning, activating spells and traps, and stuff like that, and you know, eventually getting to the synchro summons and the XC summons. It's all presented pretty nicely in this comic book manual pamphlet thing, which is pretty cool, I gotta say. So it takes you through a sequence of a duel and teaches you things along the way, like different types of spells and traps and monsters, and also takes you through some of the extra deck stuff. Well, it only takes you through synchro and XC summoning, really. I don't know why they didn't include or focus on any fusion or even link monsters, because I feel like the fusion mechanic is the easiest for people to grasp since it's been around since the beginning. But oh well, at least you learn how to synchro and XCs. I think that how they've structured this product to run you through an actual duel is a pretty neat idea, and again, I think for the absolute beginner, this product does its job pretty fine in that aspect. You get acquainted with the basics of the game and you're taught some fundamentals. While I think the idea of taking you through a real duel is nice, this isn't a real duel or anything you actually be encountering in the real world. What do I mean? Well, with the way Yu-Gi-Oh! Is today, these just aren't very realistic scenarios that you be in. And when I say that, I'm talking about just like the general flow of how it takes you through things, because it only really covers the basics of the rules and the game. Beyond that, this just isn't the most realistic scenario for what Yu-Gi-Oh! Is today. It might have been like 10 years ago maybe, but this just isn't what we're doing today. I made a video a little while back called The Many Problems with the Yu-Gi-Oh! TCG, and in that video, I said this. A bit of a different but similar note, I sometimes feel like new players are being sold a lie in the sense that the game is marketed in a way that's very simple and easy to understand. It's easy to normal summon, to XC summon using 2 monsters of the same level and then use this card to power up or activate a cool effect that helps you and then pass turn. But when you actually start playing the game yourself, when you start attending locals and stuff and start trying to play the game a lot more seriously, it's an immediate reality check that there is so much more to this game than what was sold to me. That right there is exactly what I feel is going on here. This product is amazing for beginners. Yes, no one's refuting that. I just feel like it doesn't do the best job of simulating what Yu-Gi-Oh! Is actually like today. It will get new players and beginners into the game in a nice, safe way, but once they've learned the ropes with this, they'll have to adapt and move on quickly with building actual real and playable decks if they want to take it a level up and step into something like a local scene or try their hand at a tournament. There's no real coherent theme or archetype here, which I think would have been a much better approach to take. I feel like it would have been cool if they took modern strategies, say maybe something like Sword Soul and Exo Sister or something, I'm just spitballing here, and simplified them and mashed them into 2 decks. That way, you can get to learn how to do things like Synchro and XC Summon more effectively while still including some of these cards like Zeus and also some of the other basic staples. And in doing so, it would lead perfectly into making these decks relevant to the meta, because right now, I don't think they are. I don't want to sound too negative here, but I genuinely believe that these could have been so much better than what we got. But again, it's important to know who these decks are for. These decks were made for the absolute beginner, and in that respect, they do their job pretty good and very, very nicely. It takes you through the gist of a duel and what to expect in a Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel and gets you acquainted with the basics of the game in a way that's not too overwhelming. It does an amazing job of introing new players to the game, because that's been a major problem with Yu-Gi-Oh for a long time now, and we've even spoken about it multiple times before. These decks aren't made for the more experienced players or people that have been playing Yu-Gi-Oh for more than a couple of months, so we won't find the same type of value from it. I mean, getting a copy of Zeus in a starter deck is pretty cool, but beyond the few nice reprints, I don't think it will be seeing a lot of mileage as the decks are in the box. I do have to say that Konami took a step in the right direction by trying to offer a product that can attract and ease new players into the game, because that's something we've talked about being an issue for a while. Again, it's just unfortunate that it doesn't exactly land the smoothest and kind of stumbles. As a beginner, you absolutely will have to do your research a lot after graduating from this deck, because we all know that these days there's so much more to Yu-Gi-Oh after the basics. But what do you guys think? Is this something that you see as a great thing for new players, or do you think that they deserve better? I'd love to know your thoughts, so do let me know. We haven't gotten a starter deck since 2018. That was 6 years ago, and we haven't gotten something like a 2-player starter deck product since 2015. That was almost a decade ago. So seeing something come up to the shelves like this is pretty nice, I will admit that, especially with how much Yu-Gi-Oh has evolved over that decade. But anyways guys, thanks again for checking out the video. I really appreciate everyone's support up to this point, and I'll be catching you guys again real soon in the duel arena.